3 men harassed her at dinner. 15 seconds later, she defended herself like a total boss. It was a typical Friday night at the Blue Lantern, a cozy little restaurant tucked away in the heart of the city. The chatter of couples and the clinking of glasses filled the air, but one table held a different kind of energy. That's where Ivy sat, alone but strong. She was enjoying her pasta when the trio slipped in, like shadows creeping into the light, their laughter harsh and jarring. Eyebrows furrowed, she felt a chill run down her spine. They were loud, boisterous. Their jokes dripped with venom, each word cutting more than the last. Ivy looked away, pretending to focus on her food, but they weren't having it. They turned their attention to her, those grins twisting into something menacing. One of them leaned in, close enough for her to smell the beer on his breath. "Hey, sweetheart, you shouldn't be dining alone." She felt the world press in around her. The tightness in her chest grew. Was this really happening? Around them, whispers arose, a shuffle of murmurs, and the pressure of judgment hung thick in the air. Who would step in? Where's the help? But nobody moved. Not a single soul. Just silence around their cruelty. Then came the escalation. It felt like time slowed. Ivy's heart raced, pounding in her ears. One of the men stood up, hands flailing as he leaned toward her. The jarring laughter echoed, bouncing off the walls. "What, are you scared?" Another leaned close, mocking her. "What's the matter? You can't handle a little fun?" The tension surged. Even the air felt electric, taut with the unsaid, waiting for a thunderclap. In that crushing moment, Ivy's resolve hardened. Something shifted within her, an ember ignited against the storm. From within her, a voice, quiet yet fierce, rose. In the next instant, with a confidence that shone, she stood up, her chair scraping back, and in one swift motion, she shot back. "You think this is funny? You think I'm afraid? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The sudden shift left everyone around them frozen, eyes wide, breaths caught. Ivy's voice rang out, clear and strong. Just as quickly as she had stood, she lunged forward, placing herself firmly opposite them. The air crackled with anticipation. What was she going to do? Would they even back off? The crowd breathed in, waiting, hearts racing. Then came the moment, the turning point. All attention was on Ivy, the hushed music fading into a distant echo. The trio froze, caught off guard, uncertainty flashing across their faces. It was a wild blend of fear and adrenaline that enveloped her, pulsing through the air like an electric current. Would she take them on? Would this be her moment of truth? As the seconds dragged, space shrank, and tension swelled. Her eyes pierced through the dimmed light, and in that very second, it felt like the world held its breath. What would happen next? The defiance in her stood like a beacon, but was the storm about to break loose? Ivy's heart thundered in her chest as she faced the trio. The moment felt surreal, suspended like the stretched rim of a taut rubber band. She could practically hear the blood rushing in her ears, adrenaline igniting a fire beneath her skin. The man closest to her stumbled back slightly, skin paling as Ivy stepped forward, grounding herself. "Is this what you call fun?" she challenged, voice steady as the steel in her core. "Who do you think you are?" One of them barked, disbelief etched in his expression. He looked down at Ivy as if she were a bug that had just flown too close to the light. Laughter rippled through the group, a wolfish sound that made Ivy's stomach churn, but she pressed on. "I'm the one who's tired of your games," she shot back, fists clenching at her sides. "You want to see fear? Look in the mirror." Silence followed her words, thickening the air. She felt the truth of them resonate through the restaurant. Whispers ceased, conversations paused, and in the sudden stillness, Ivy drew strength. The men exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering within each glare now. It was small but palpable, like a crack in the armor they'd been wearing. For Ivy, it was like stepping closer to a cliff's edge, staring down into a vast unknown. Then, the bravado melted as one of the men, taller and more aggressive, laughed again, but this time it was forced. "You think you can intimidate us?" he sneered, attempting to reassert dominance. He swaggered forward, puffing out his chest, a lingering stench of arrogance hanging around him. Incredibly, laughter erupted from the tables around her, a collective burst of support that took Ivy by surprise. They shared glances, each person waking from their stupor, exchanging unspoken bonds. This was not just about her now, this was a stand, and Ivy was at the front lines. "You think it's funny to bring fear to someone just trying to enjoy a meal?" she pressed, her heart racing even faster as she pushed back against the tide of their aggressive energy. "How pathetic can you be?" The change was instantaneous. The men hesitated. Their walls began to falter under the pressure of Ivy's intent, and the tension in the room shifted. Accountability washed over them like cold water, stark and undeniable. But just as Ivy felt the power of the crowd bolster her resolve, the man closest to her took a step back, confused and uncertain, glancing at his friends for support that wasn't coming. "Just chill out," he mumbled, glancing away. "We were just messing around." "Messed up, you mean?" Ivy pressed, feeling emboldened by their retreat. Each word was charged with indignation, carrying weight as if they were hammers driving nails into the hollow pretense of their arrogance. Suddenly, the door to the Blue Lantern swung open, and a figure stepped in, shadows spilling across the floor. There was something about the way they moved, purposeful, determined, their presence commanding attention away from what had just unfolded. The room sucked in a collective breath. Faces turned, curiosity dawning even amid the rising tension. Ivy's heart began to race again, this time not just from the confrontation but from a creeping sense of dread. Who was this newcomer? As the figure approached, Ivy searched their face for a clue. Was this help? Or yet another element to upend her hard-won ground? With the tension in the air thick enough to cut, Ivy would find out soon enough what this new layer of complexity would mean for her moment of defiance. Just as she braced herself for whatever was next, the unmistakable feeling of watchful eyes turned her resolve to steal once more. What had she awakened? What storm was brewing just beyond the door? The figure stepped into the light, revealing a woman with sharp features and dark hair cascading like a waterfall down her back. She wore a crimson leather jacket that hugged her frame, each movement crackling with intensity. The atmosphere shifted again, adjusting to her presence as if someone had flipped a switch. Ivy's attention snapped to the newcomer's face. Was this confrontation meant to escalate even further? But there was something in the woman's expression, intensity mixed with an underlying calm, that made Ivy's gut tighten. "Let her go," the new arrival said, her voice a low rumble, echoing through the hushed restaurant. There was no room for argument, but the three men hesitated. Confusion danced in their eyes, the boldness they'd worn slackening under this new challenge. Ivy held her breath, caught between the urge to launch into a tirade or retreat into the safety of status quo. The tallest of the trio snorted, trying to mask his fear with bravado. "And who the hell are you?" he asked, only a hint of menace in his tone. "Someone who doesn't appreciate bullies," she shot back, stepping closer to Ivy. "Why don't you get yourselves a drink somewhere else? This isn't your playground." Ivy glanced at the other diners who, until moments ago, had been frozen witnesses to her ordeal. Now, they were leaning in, whispering among themselves, eyes flickering between Ivy and the stranger. There was a palpable mix of support and curiosity brewing in the atmosphere. The men exchanged tense whispers, clearly unsure whether to back down or retaliate. In that moment, the woman shifted her body, urging Ivy to stand beside her. The unyielding confidence radiating from her was infectious, infusing Ivy with a renewed sense of courage. "Empty threats won't save you," the stranger pressed, her gaze unwavering. Ivy felt her own resolve fortify as each passing second embedded her defiance deeper into her core. She took a small step forward, shoulders squared. "Yeah, you're just wasting our time," Ivy chimed in with surprising assertiveness, the words flowing out like a surge of energy. Empowered by the female warrior beside her, she felt the thrill of sisterhood blossom, a wild and beautiful bond forged through shared bravery. But just as victory seemed within reach, the confrontation's mood twisted. The aggression in the air shifted, morphing into something darker and more sinister. The tallest thug's expression twisted into a furious grimace, and suddenly, the playful banter dissolved. "You think you can just swoop in like some knight in shining armor?" He snarled at the woman, balling his fists. It didn't take a genius to know things were about to escalate again. Ivy could hear her heart beating like a drum. "Back off," Ivy said, her voice trembling slightly, but it was enough. The line was drawn. "Or what?" He shot back, but for the first time, doubt creased his brow. The others shifted, glancing between their leader and the two women. Before Ivy could respond, the stranger pulled a sleek object from her jacket. It glinted menacingly under the dim lights, a knife. The sight froze Ivy, but she could also feel a rush of solidarity. Where was this going? "I suggest you choose wisely, gentlemen," the woman warned, her voice smooth yet full of promise. There was no going back now. Ivy held her breath, the stakes rising higher. A standoff hung in the air, electric with potential violence and unseen fates. Would they retreat, or would the table turn into chaos? As time seemed to stretch, the answer felt just out of reach, lurking behind the contours of tension in the room. One heart-pounding moment lay before Ivy, a precipice that could plunge them into unpredictability. With eyes glued to the unfolding scene, she realized she couldn't just stand by. Not anymore. What was about to break in the silence? And who was truly in control? The silence cracked like broken glass as the tension surged in the restaurant. Ivy felt as if the world had slowed down, the subtle thrum of her heartbeat drowning out the hushed murmurs of diners, every anxious gaze zeroing in on the confrontation. She glanced at the knife gleaming in the stranger's hand, its blade reflecting the flickering lights above. The woman held it with a steady grip, her face a mask of determination, and Ivy felt a rush of mixed fear and exhilaration. "Last chance," the stranger said, her voice low and eerily calm. It sent chills down Ivy's spine. The three men exchanged uneasy glances, the bravado they'd worn moments ago wavering like a candle in the wind. "Think you're tough, huh?" The tall thug spat, eyes narrowing. There was a tremor in his voice, the menace bleeding away as doubt took root. "You think a knife makes you strong?" The tension tightened around them like a noose. Ivy's breath caught in her throat. Would this turn violent? The stranger didn't flinch. "Strength is more than a weapon. It's knowing when to show your hand and when to pull back. What are you guys? Just loud-mouthed wannabes?" The second thug, shorter but thick-set, shifted nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "We don't want trouble," he mumbled, a hint of desperation cracking through his bravado. "Oh, I think you do," the woman countered, stepping closer. "Is that why you're 3-on-1 with a woman?" The tallest man, grasping at lost pride, lunged forward. "You don't know who you're messing with!" he shouted, rage throwing his words like daggers. In a heartbeat, the dynamic shifted. The knife glimmered as the woman instinctively raised it. Fluid and poised, she took a step forward that mirrored his advance. "I know exactly who I'm messing with. Boys like you don't scare me." Before Ivy could react, the cafe erupted. The sound of chairs scraping back, dishes clattering as people scrambled to stand, the air thick with panic. Ivy felt the warm breath of fear as she watched chaos unfold, the three men stumbling back, eyes wide-eyed in the ensuing commotion. The dagger's blade seemed to shimmer like a promise of freedom on one end and a harbinger of destruction on the other. Ivy clenched her hands as she witnessed the fear spread like wildfire in the men's eyes. They weren't ready for this fight, not at all. "Back away slowly," the woman commanded, her voice slicing through the noise like a knife. One of the thugs, realization dawning on him, began to retreat. "Come on, let us get out of here," he muttered, urgency spilling into his tone. But just as the first man began to back up, Ivy felt flames of defiance ignite within her. The woman wasn't alone. This was her fight too. "Yes, right," Ivy chimed in, her voice stronger than she imagined. You picked the wrong place for your playground. Now leave. The leader's bravado wavered, and he glanced over his shoulder, as if weighing the costs of standing their ground. Ivy could see the wheels turning in his head, fear wrestling with machismo. Outside the restaurant, distant sounds of sirens began to crescendo, a haunting omen of the real world encroaching on their drama. Ivy seized the moment, determination flooding through her. You don't get to walk away from this. She stepped forward, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The moment hung electrified between them, a terrifying blend of choice and consequence. Would they turn tail or claim some form of twisted victory? Ivy's heart raced as she looked at the woman beside her, an ally forged in the fire of confrontation. Would they stand or would they fall? The men hesitated, fear clawing at their bravado, and Ivy knew tonight was a defining moment. But then out of nowhere one of the goons lunged, a desperate last-ditch effort to salvage his pride. What happened next sent a shockwave through the crowd. The moment hung in the air like a thick fog, and Ivy felt the pulse of uncertainty coursing through her veins. The thug's lunge came out of nowhere, a blur of motion driven by panic and rage. The blade gleamed as the woman reacted, slicing through the space that separated them. Ivy gasped, aware that every second counted. In a swift, calculated motion, the stranger sidestepped the attacker's clumsy reach, shifting like a dancer in flight. The knife arced toward him like a shooting star, and in that instant, a gasp rippled through the crowd. The thug stumbled, eyes wide with shock as the tip of the blade caught the fabric of his jacket, leaving a crimson mark. A collective murmur broke out among the onlookers as Ivy's heart lurched. This was it. Get back! The woman shouted, voice steady but laced with urgency. Ivy could barely breathe. The remaining two thugs froze, astonishment painted on their faces. They were no longer hunters but prey, cornered within their own bravado. Outside, the sirens howled like wolves, echoing the urgency brewing within the restaurant. Think this is a game? The woman yelled, eyes flashing defiantly. You're in over your heads. I suggest you get out while you still can. Fear rippled through the air, grabbing hold of the two men. They exchanged glances, the cockiness straining from their features as they weighed their options. Amid the chaos, Ivy saw their confidence crumble like wet paper. They were faced not just with a fighter but a force of nature, a woman who fought back. The taller thug, still nursing his pride, narrowed his eyes. You think you can scare us off with a few theatrics? He sneered, but his voice lacked conviction. Ivy shoved her shoulders back, finding a spark of courage. She's not acting, she countered, stepping closer, her voice a surge of conviction. You picked the wrong fight, and you know it. In a moment that felt stretched to eternity, the tension coiled tighter. Outside the windows, shadows danced, police lights flashing red and blue, their reflections flickering like specters. Then, one of the remaining thugs raised his hands. All right, we're done here. We're leaving, he said, desperation creeping in. But the taller thug balked, fists clenched, pride warring against fear. No! He growled, taking a step forward, rage welling up like a tide. Ivy's heartbeat thundered in her ears. This isn't worth it! She shouted, but the confrontation hung suspended, straining against the weight of chaos around them. Walk away, just walk away. Ivy felt her throat tighten, every word a plea, a hope buried beneath fear. The sirens grew louder, the distant threats closing in. The knife-wielding woman held her ground, posture strong, chin raised defiantly. Your friends already decided to flee. Don't be the one left behind in shame. In that moment, hesitation turned into a tangible force. The thug faltered, torn between the urge to maintain his bravado and the instinct for self-preservation. Finally, the seconds stretched thin, and realization seeped into his mind. He stepped back, shoulders slumping as he hissed, "This isn't over." But he turned on his heel, the two remaining men scrambling after him. The tension began to lift, the spark of chaos extinguishing as they bolted through the door. A chorus of relief washed over the remaining diners, clapping breaking out as the reality of the situation settled in. Ivy felt the rush of adrenaline start to ebb but couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom lingering in the pit of her stomach. What just happened? Ivy's voice cracked as she turned to the woman beside her. With a calmness that belied the storm they'd just faced, the stranger sheathed her knife, eyes scanning the restaurant filled with astonished faces. You stood up. You were ready to fight. But now it's your turn to ask the questions. Ivy felt a shiver race down her spine. The unexpected turn of events left a question hanging in the air. Who were they? She asked, her hands trembling, and the woman just smiled a smile that held both shadows and secrets. And just like that, the night took another turn. Ivy's heart raced. The atmosphere buzzed with a mix of lingering fear and newfound energy. Diners exchanged glances, whispers filling the void left by the thugs. Some looked relieved, others still shocked. But none of them quite understood what had just unfolded. "What's your name?" Ivy asked, locking eyes with her savior, hoping for answers that would ease the tension in her chest. "Call me Raven," the woman replied, her voice steady. Ivy noticed the sharpness in Raven's eyes, an unwavering resolve wrapped in mystery. "Raven, so those guys were after you?" Ivy asked, her voice trembling slightly, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Raven's lips tightened, and she glanced toward the door where the thugs had just fled. "Let us not focus on them. We need to figure out what's going on. You're too close to something dangerous." The weight of her words sent another shiver down Ivy's spine. "Dangerous? I just wanted dinner." A bitter laugh escaped Raven, and she shook her head. "Doesn't it matter what you wanted? Sometimes danger finds you when you're least expecting it." The restaurant buzzed nervously around them. Couples whispered and eyed the door with concern, waiting for an encore that no one wanted. Ivy's mind raced. "Why did you intervene?" she pressed, desperate for clarity amid the chaos. "You barely knew me." Raven met her gaze, her intensity piercing. "You showed courage. Most people just watch. They would have let those men hurt you." "She's right," a voice piped up from behind them. Ivy turned to see an older man leaning on the back of his chair, his hair peppered with gray. "I saw it too. You didn't back down. Not many would do that." Heat rushed to Ivy's cheeks. "I wasn't sure what to do. I just reacted." "Exactly," Raven said, her voice firm. "And you need to learn how to keep that fire. It could save you." Ivy felt a lump forming in her throat. Was there more to this than just a random encounter? "What do you mean, keep that fire?" "Listen, Ivy," Raven started, her tone shifting to something more serious. "It's no coincidence they targeted you. They've got eyes everywhere, eyes that don't just watch, but hunt." "What do you know?" Ivy demanded, her pulse quickening. Anger mixed with fear. "Tell me." Raven stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "If you want to stay safe, you need to trust me. I'll help you. But you need to be prepared for what's next. This isn't over. They will come back." Ivy processed the weight of Raven's words. The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. It wasn't just an ordinary night out. She had stumbled into something darker, a game that hadn't played out fully. A distant wail of sirens crept closer, shattering her thoughts as the flickering disco lights from outside painted the inside of the restaurant in shades of red and blue. "But how do I prepare for what?" Ivy's voice wavered. She was teetering between fear and the flickering determination that had surfaced earlier. Raven's gaze hardened. "You need more than a fight, Ivy. You need to understand the enemy. And you need allies." The air crackled with tension as realization dawned on Ivy. She was in the middle of something much larger than herself. "Will you help me?" Ivy's voice was barely a whisper. Raven's eyes softened just a shade. "As long as you're willing to learn." A pulse of determination surged through Ivy, igniting a fierce resolve. "I'll do whatever it takes," she declared. Just then, the door flew open, interrupting the moment and sending a chill up her spine. A man in dark clothing stepped in, surveying the room with cold, calculating eyes. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Ivy's heart slammed against her ribcage as fear tightened around her like a vice. What had they walked into now? Don't move, Raven instructed, her voice steady but edged with urgency. As the man spotted them, a smirk crept onto his face, chilling Ivy to the bone. So, the fire is still alive, is it? Ivy swallowed hard, knowing that the night was far from over and the true test of her courage was about to begin. Panic surged through Ivy as she locked eyes with the man in dark clothing. His smile was predatory, a wolf sizing up its prey. Whispers skittered through the restaurant, tension thickening the air. She wanted to look away, to disappear into the walls, but the weight of Raven's presence anchored her. "Who are you?" Ivy asked, each word laced with a fierceness she didn't fully feel. "Just a messenger," he replied, tilting his head like a curious hawk. "But I see your new friend has decided to play hero again." His eyes flicked toward Raven, recognition igniting a dangerous glint. How very predictable. Raven moved to shield Ivy, her body taut with control, ready to erupt. "Leave now, or you'll regret it." The man chuckled, the sound a low, menacing rumble. "Regret? Funny coming from you." He took a step closer, scanning the patrons around them, savoring their fear. "You'd think about saving the weak, maybe worrying about yourself instead." "Owning a heart does not mean you're weak," Ivy shot back, surprising even herself. "You've got no idea who you're dealing with." The man's smirk faltered for a heartbeat before it returned, sharper this time. "That's rich. But you should know, you stumbled into a game you know nothing about. The stakes are much higher than you can imagine." Raven stepped forward, her voice cutting like ice. "You have no business here. Don't drag her into your mess." "Too late," he replied, eyes dancing with malicious delight. "She's already in deep, whether she likes it or not." With that, he lifted a hand, signaling something unseen. A chill washed over Ivy, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She followed Raven's gaze toward the door, where two more figures emerged, identical in threat. They were as shadowy as the first, menacing silhouettes that loomed larger than life. "Prepare yourself, Ivy," Raven whispered, her tone low and urgent. "This isn't just a confrontation, it's a warning. They'll try to break you." The moment stretched, but then the atmosphere ignited with movement. In an instinctual reaction, Raven lunged forward, but Ivy felt her feet anchored to the ground. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. She was torn between her need to fight and her instinct to flee. With a surge of adrenaline, Ivy broke free, darting past Raven. "No! I won't let you hurt her." The words spilled out before she could second-guess herself. The thug's eyes widened in shock, disbelief fueling their rage. Ivy's heart pounded like a war drum, every muscle in her body quaking, but she pushed through. "Look at her!" one of them barked, pointing in mockery. "Such bravery in the face of danger." "Yes," Ivy shouted back, her voice steady. "And it's going to be the last thing you ever underestimate." Raven's gaze flashed with approval, but the men laughed, a cruel sound that echoed around them. "You think courage will save you? That's cute." Ivy drew a deep breath, channeling every ounce of courage into her next move. "Courage is just the beginning." Suddenly, the wrangling clatter of chairs and the gasps of diners faded into the background, replaced by the rapid beat of her heart thundering in her ears. A fire was igniting deep inside her, a fire that refused to be snuffed out. Ignoring the chill creeping down her body, Ivy stood tall. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I refuse to be a pawn." The smirk on the lead thug faltered, uncertainty flitting across his face. For the first time, they seemed less like predators and more like men caught off guard, and that realization filled Ivy with power. But before she could grasp it, the thug stepped back, raising a warning hand. "Game on, then. Don't say we didn't warn you." With that, they pivoted, retreating toward the door, leaving Ivy and Raven stewing in an unsettling silence. "What was that?" Ivy gasped, her breath mingled with disbelief and dread. Raven glanced toward the doorway, her eyes narrowing. "A warning, yes? But it also means they'll return. We'll need to be ready." Ivy nodded, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. But this time, fear was mingled with a fierce determination. I want to know everything. As a sudden crash echoed from the kitchen, sending diners jumping from their seats, Ivy's stomach dropped. What now? Raven's eyes locked onto the chaos erupting behind the bar. That is just the beginning of what is to come, Ivy. Are you ready? But Ivy could only watch, her heart racing, as the shadows swept through the restaurant, the night unraveling into chaos once again. The crash from the kitchen reverberated like thunder, and every instinct screamed at Ivy to run. But rooted in place, she watched as confusion spread among the diners, jaws dropping and eyes wide with horror. Raven's grip on her arm was a lifeline, yet it only fueled Ivy's growing fury. Across the room, a waitress stumbled, nearly dropping a tray of drinks as the shadows in the doorway twisted and shifted. Ivy's heart raced. She could feel the tension in the air like static before a storm. "They'll come back," Raven said, scanning the crowd. "We need to create a diversion." "What about the others?" Ivy whispered, her voice trembling. Suddenly, the weight of their lives seemed to hang in the air. If she fought, would anyone escape? Raven's fierce gaze locked onto hers, igniting a spark of resolve. "They need our protection. Are you in?" Without hesitation, Ivy nodded, though the knot in her stomach tightened. "What do we do?" "Keep them occupied. Draw attention. I'll take care of the rest," Raven replied, determination hardening her features. Ivy swallowed hard and glanced around, spotting the bar stocked with bottles that reflected the dim light. A wild plan formed in her mind. It wasn't just about fighting back. It was about survival. With a sudden surge of courage, Ivy dashed toward the bar. She grabbed a bottle, its glass cool and smooth against her palm. The din of chatter faded into a dull murmur, and all she could hear was the quickening pulse of her heart. "Hey!" she shouted, catching the thugs' attention as they finally emerged from the shadows, their smirks returning. "You think you're tough? Come at me!" The lead thug raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering in his eyes as he stepped forward. "Girl's got guts. But it's not guts you need, it's skill, and you're lacking." Something snapped in Ivy. "And you're all cowards hiding in the dark. You think you can scare me? Watch this." As soon as the words left her mouth, she swung the bottle in a wide arc, a failed attempt at intimidation that shattered against the floor. But it was the surprise on their faces that emboldened her. Perhaps it hadn't been such a bad idea after all. Raven sprang into action, darting toward the nearest thug, pulling a chair from under a stunned diner. She swung it with precision, the wood connecting with a solid thud against the man's shoulder. He howled in pain, stumbling back. "Ivy, now!" Raven yelled, and the urgency in her voice sparked Ivy into motion. Casting aside fear, Ivy lunged forward, ducking just as a fist came flying toward her face. She countered, landing a kick to the thug's knee, sending him crashing into a nearby table. Glasses tumbled, beer splattered, and the fight erupted into a frenzy. Screams filled the air, people scrambling for safety. Ivy and Raven were a whirlwind of action, each blow striking with purpose. They were no longer just outmatched girls but a force that demanded respect and attention. Adrenaline surged through Ivy, fueling her strength. Each movement was more assured than the last, transforming her fear into adrenaline-fueled bravado. "Don't let them regroup!" Raven shouted, eyes fierce. Ivy glanced to the side, where the third thug was rallying, his face dark with rage. They weren't done yet, and neither was she. Suddenly, the large man lunged at them, fists raised, but Ivy stood her ground. "Not today!" she yelled, charging forward with a newfound fearlessness. But just as she reached him, a blaring siren cut through the chaos, silencing everything. Relief and dread washed over her like a wave, the authorities rushing in too late. "Go!" Raven screamed, grabbing Ivy's hand. But before Ivy could react, the third thug reached for her. Then, in a single heartbeat, everything spiraled out of control as the scuffle intensified. Ivy caught sight of a masked figure standing just outside, watching with a chilling calm. A new threat loomed, and Ivy's instincts screamed that the true battle was only just beginning. The masked figure stood just beyond the fray, motionless, surveying the scene with a chilling detachment. Ivy's stomach twisted. Who were they? Were they friend or foe? The thugs before them still closed in, their eyes locked on Ivy and Raven like predators zeroing in on their prey. Raven, this isn't over! Ivy shouted, adrenaline surging through her body as she swung to face the closest thug again. Their eyes flickered away momentarily, just enough for Ivy to capitalize. She took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of her fear into her next move. Come on! She yelled, feigning bravado. Let us finish this! The thug lunged, fist swinging. Ivy ducked and sidestepped just as the sirens blared louder, drowning out the chaos momentarily. The backup had arrived, but whether it would save them or not was still a question in Ivy's mind. Raven! Behind you! Someone screamed, voice breaking through the din. Ivy spun around, heart racing as she saw a thug barreling toward Raven. Without thinking, she lunged, catching a glint of a broken bar stool lying nearby. She scooped it up, swinging it with all her might as she collided with the oncoming attacker. The wood connected with a satisfying crack against his side, sending him sprawling to the ground. Nice hit! Raven yelled, but Ivy hardly heard her. Focused, she turned her gaze back to their original target. The lead thug was scrambling to regain control, barking orders at his compatriots. The decorum of the restaurant was shattered, glass glistened on the floor, and the atmosphere buzzed with chaos. Ivy could feel the eyes of the remaining diners on her, both terrified and transfixed, some even clutching their phones, recording the chaos. A sense of purpose surged through Ivy. She would fight back, not just for herself and Raven, but for everyone in that room. Go for their eyes! Ivy shouted, channeling her inner warrior. Hit them where it hurts! Raven responded with a nod, but their small advantage began to slip away as the thug who Ivy knocked down began to rise. Then, from the corner of her eye, Ivy noticed the masked figure moving toward the doorway. They seemed unconcerned with the battle, just observing as if waiting for something. Inspired by the sudden urge to confront this new variable, Ivy called out, Hey! Who are you? Why are you just watching? The figure stopped, their posture tense, and slowly turned toward Ivy. The mask was plain, void of markings, almost eerie in its simplicity. For a moment, their eyes met. A spark of recognition ignited in Ivy's mind, a fleeting shadow of possibility, but before she could dwell, more shouts erupted around her. Get her! The lead thug rushed at Ivy, swinging blindly. A quick dodge saved her, and Raven took the opportunity to land a powerful uppercut, sending the thug staggering back. Keep moving! Raven yelled. We have to back out. Now! But before they could make a run for it, the masked figure stepped in, blocking the exit. Ivy's heart raced. Had they come to help, or were they the threat? The figure's gaze shifted quickly from the thugs to Ivy and Raven, and in their frame stood a certainty that sent chills down Ivy's spine. Get down! Yelled the figure suddenly, lunging forward. Instinctively, Ivy dropped to the ground, pulling Raven with her. A flash of silver sliced through the air, a knife, skidding where Ivy had stood a split second before. Who the hell? Ivy began, but the masked figure wasn't finished. In here! Now! They moved with urgency, ushering Ivy and Raven into a narrow passage behind the bar as the chaos erupted once more. Heart pounding, Ivy couldn't shake the feeling that this masked person held more answers than they were letting on. Who were they really? And could they truly be trusted? Ivy, we need to stick together, Raven urged as they ducked behind the bar. Whatever comes next, we face it head on. But the question loomed heavy in Ivy's mind. Were they truly safe? As the sirens blared and the battle raged on, Ivy's eyes met the masked figure's once again. What truths would they reveal, and would it be enough to change the tide of this fight? The sirens grew louder, echoing through the air, and the sound sent a shiver down Ivy's spine. Time was running out. Ivy peeked cautiously around the bar at the chaos still unfolding. The masked figure stood close, a sentinel poised to strike or shield them. Raven was beside her, focus locked on the chaos, but Ivy's mind churned, questions piling her thoughts high. Who are you? Ivy managed to gasp, her heart racing. Just someone looking out for you, the figure replied, voice low, filled with urgency. But you need to trust me if we're going to get out of this alive. Trust? Ivy's voice trembled with confusion and anger. You just jumped in out of nowhere, and we don't have time for this. The masked figure interrupted, voice sharp. The longer we stall, the closer they get to realizing you're not just collateral damage. They want you. Raven smirked, a defiant glint in her eye. Well, they obviously underestimated us. So, if they want a fight, let us give it to them. Ivy felt the pulse of determination stir within her, firing her spirit. There was no way she would be just a pawn in someone else's game. Let us take the offensive then, Ivy said, the words spilling out in a rush. We don't let fear dictate our moves. Raven nodded, adrenaline lighting her features. Exactly. No backing down now. The masked figure gestured towards the back door. This way. They'll all expect us to run for the front. We can slip out unnoticed if we move quickly. Good idea, Ivy said, her heartbeat thrumming with resolve. They needed to strategize, to regroup. As they stealthily advanced to the door, the sounds of struggle and shouting filled the air behind them, drowning in the rising waves of urgency. They reached the door, and Ivy pushed it open slowly, peering onto the darkened alleyway. Ready? The masked figure asked, eyes locked on Ivy. Ready, she affirmed, a lump forming in her throat but determination overriding fear. Together, they stepped into the alley and made a break for it, racing through the shadows like ghosts. Ivy kept her pace steady beside Raven and the figure, aware of the adrenaline pumping through her veins. They reached a corner and paused, listening to the chaos fading behind them. Where to now? Ivy asked, breathless. Follow me, the figure said, leading them down a narrow side street lined with dim light. As they rounded another corner, the figure halted abruptly. Listen, Ivy, they said, voice urgent and serious. You've tangled with forces far beyond you tonight. They see you as a threat because of what you stand for, your fire. I don't understand, Ivy murmured, her brow furrowing in confusion. What do you mean? They are part of a larger organization, a group that thrives on fear and control. They'll come after you harder now, the figure said, firm, but a hint of concern shone through their mask. Raven stepped closer, brow furrowed. And what do we do about it? We can't just wait for them to come knocking. The figure missed a beat, then nodded, pulling something from their pocket, an old photograph. This is a reminder of what we fight for, Ivy. You need to know the stakes. Ivy took the photo, her heart sinking as she recognized familiar faces, people she'd seen in her neighborhood. They're scared, hurt by these people? Yes, and that could be you. You're stronger than you think, but you need to prepare. Will you fight back? Ivy's chest tightened. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the lives of others too. I'll fight, Ivy said softly, her heart ignited with conviction. I choose to stand. Raven grinned, a fierce determination lighting up her face. Together then. The masked figure nodded their approval, but hadn't taken their eyes off Ivy, who still gripped the photo tightly. No matter what, you remember, you have allies. We'll train you, prepare you for them. Strength lies in numbers, Ivy. Just then, a familiar sound echoed from the way they had come, a cacophony of shouting, footsteps racing. Ivy's heart dropped. They would find them soon. Go! Ivy shouted. They dashed across the street, adrenaline propelling them forward. Ivy's mind raced with thoughts. They'd need every ounce of strength, every ally, and every fiery spark within to confront the mess that was closing in. Let us make this count. We fight for what's right, Ivy proclaimed, the fire in her soul roaring louder than the chaos closing in. Together, Raven whispered, the masked figure nodding firmly. With their hearts united in courage, they raced onward, forging a path through the darkness with a purpose far greater than just survival. They were ready to reclaim their power and defend everyone they cared for. And as Ivy stepped into the unknown, determination gripping her heart, she knew that there was no turning back. Together, they would face the storm. Their fight had just begun, and they weren't going down without a fight, Time to show them what strength really looked like. You need to subscribe now. We have more incredible stories and journeys waiting for you that you won't want to miss. Smash that like button now to help us feed the algorithm and ensure everyone gets to witness this thrilling saga. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about tonight's battle and where this story will head next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this story. Be a part of this journey and show your support in every way you can.